So recently, Moses Kuria shared an image on his social media account of possible individuals that now he believes will change the image of politics in 2026. He shared two images. The first image through his X account had three individuals. That was Gideon Moi, there was of course Oparanya, and there was Ido Odinga, and he was saying that that was his prediction, that those were the people that were going to change and save the country in the year 2026. Now, a lot of takes were taken from that particular revelation that came from Moses Kuria, because of course Moses Kuria's revelations are more than revelations sometimes, and sometimes they're just but political statements. So it was taken out of context that Kuria could have been hinting that these particular individuals, of course, might be eyeing the presidency. But saving the country could come from different angles. For Ida, for example, you have seen how restoring the position of Sifuna has come from her own iron fist. And she has decided that, of course, instead of using the party structures to quell these squabbles that were taking part or that were part of the party, she has gone ahead to use what is now called a board of trustees that was appointed by herself to actually decide an end to that particular bickering against Sifuna. Now, for Oparanya, the call is that perhaps we are looking at an individual that might unite the Luhya votes ahead of the 2027 elections for a common bargaining point, because as eyes are focusing and looking at, of course, Honorable Natembeya, the Trans Nzoia part is most often considered to be part of Rift Valley more than part of the Western region. And of course, the overall figure that now looks as the Luhya figure that might unite these people and create one bargaining front in 2027 is, of course, Oparanya. Away from Oparanya, there is Gideon Moi. And Gideon Moi is the individual that we want to put before the mirror today, because now there are murmurs and rumors that Ruto betrayed him in the deal that they did not put to paper around October 25th. And this particular deal that was not put into paper had certain terms that have since not been met. And so Gideon Moi looks like an individual that was told to leave the senatorial position of Baringo only to be duped under President William Ruto's arms. We will take a look at that entirely. But now it seems that if this is the case with Honorable Gideon Moi, then the next thing that can happen is that Gideon Moi's rift from the Rift Valley area might be the decision that saves the country come the time in 2026 and 2027 when that will be necessary. After that, he shared another image. Before we come back to the Gideon Moi story, he shared another image. Now, this other image had three people. It had President William Ruto, it had Kalonzo Musyoka, and of course it had Matiang'i. And as per the statements and the quote of Honorable Moses Kuria, he said that this will be the only faces who will be in the presidential ballot in 2027. Now, this has reinforced the conversation from the Jubilee spectrum that should the united opposition not give that particular position of a presidential flag bearer to their candidate, preferred candidate, Honorable Okengo Matiang'i, then they might go alone. But it has also incited fears within the united opposition that is a united front between now and 2027, because the angle is, will it be Kalonzo or will it be Okengo Matiang'i? And the fear is mounted that should they go the Kalonzo way, then what will happen of Matiang'i? And should they go the Matiang'i way, what will happen of Kalonzo? So this image also portrayed a possibility of having two different fronts of the united opposition in the ballot come 2027. But first, let us look at the Moi deal before we go back to interpreting those two images that we say sometimes might be political statements, but sometimes might be more than a revelation. Now, murmurs of betrayal are emerging from Kanu corners, and of course they are casting doubt over this political deal which meant to return the Moi family and of course the Kanu party into the center of power. Now, sometimes back, Honorable Gideon Moi was eyeing the senatorial position, of course, of Baringo. This was as a result of the death of the former Senator William Chepchumba, who had actually died. And so Honorable Gideon Moi saw it as an opportunity to reclaim this position that he had held prior prior to the death of that former senator. Now, it was a very, very heated competition, and it looked like Gideon Moi was going to win it. But there was yet another individual from the UDA camp called Honorable Chimite, who was also eyeing that position under the UDA ticket. Now, what happened is that Gideon Moi and President William Ruto, in the eve of it, had a conversation and met. And of course, President William Ruto went even a notch higher to address the family of Moi, and of course other supporters of the Kanu government and supporters now of President William Ruto in Kabarak. Now, President William Ruto even had an opportunity to lay a sheath of flowers on the grave of Honorable Moi. And you remember sometimes back, ahead of the 2022 general elections, when Raila had met Moi, the late President Moi did not have a meeting with President Ruto. Now, people even made statements to that effect, that Moi that did not meet President Ruto while alive now has President Ruto putting flowers on his sheath and addressing people in Kabarak, of course in his homestead. But those statements aside, this is what happened. There was to be a deal, and the deal was to include Kanu into power and to give positions of power to both Kanu and of course Gideon Moi. And the most interesting part, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Whereas most political deals are always reduced into paper, including now this hugely contested deal between the UDA party and the ODM party called the 10-point agenda, which created the broad-based government, which is often reduced to paper and signed by both people getting into this deal, the UDA Kanu deal was not done in paper. It was purely verbal. And the Moi, of course, Ruto deal was not reduced to any signing or paper. It was purely verbal. So this, until now, the State House is silent. The Kanu part have not seen any political appointments, and they have not seen any statement that is being made from this part of the government to honor the Kanu UDA deal. So others are now questioning whether or not the Moi deal ever took place, or whether if it took place, whether it ever took off. Of course, this move was to return Moi from a political wilderness where it had existed for quite some time back to the center of power, the way I said. So it was a deal that others say had even an involvement of Raila Odinga. Everyone was involved. There was Honorable President William Ruto, there was Raila Odinga, there was Gideon Moi then, and the purpose was that let's come together because both President William Ruto and Raila Odinga began their political journey from, of course, the Kanu party. So this was a deal that was returning the party that gave them power and gave them opportunity back to the center of power, and it had certain goodies that ought to have come from it. So let us see what was to come from it. But before we discuss what was to come from this deal, of course, it's very important to remember that Gideon Moi was forced to shelve his ambitions as a result of this deal. When I started by saying he was eyeing for the senatorial seat in this particular by-election that was happening in Baringo, and he was most likely going to win it. Then he was told to shelve his ambition. President William Ruto himself, while visiting Baringo, said he needed Gideon Moi in more state roles, and he wanted now to leave the Senate platform for young people like Chemite to actually join the other young people in the Senate and help in government policies. So even if it was verbal, it was displaying this particular image that we are getting into a verbal deal, yes, but the verbal deal is that I'm trying to give you a higher serious position in the eyes of the public, irrespective of what they discussed personally. So I'm trying to give you a higher position that is very high than the Senate position, and we are trying to leave the Senate position for a UDA candidate. Now, frustrations are growing within Kanu. A lot of it. Nation records anonymity of members that have now talked to the TV directly, and members confirm that there was of course no written agreement, and just it was the president's word and promise of inclusion. Now the country is battling a lot of president's promises that were made that have not been delivered. But if these presidential promises were to get to the level where they were being made to other party leaders, including the Kanu party leader, and they were not being delivered, then it would make non-deliverance of presidential promises in a very huge scale. So on whether this was a Ruto's plan Sources revealed that it was Gideon's idea actually. Gideon is the one that suggested that he did not want this particular deal to be written down and signed, and that he just wanted to trust President William Ruto out of President William Ruto's words and promises. So these sources reveal that the deal not being signed between Moi and of course Ruto was not a Ruto's idea, but was of course Honorable Gideon's idea. But now that the agreement was arrived at based on promises, its implementation is of course still wanting. So this deal allegedly was brokered, as I've said, by Raila Odinga, and they only came after successive meetings between Raila Odinga, Gideon Moi and Ruto, and some of these meetings is said to have even taken place even in Dubai. So these meetings, it was not just a one-time meeting then the deal was brokered. It seems like it was a process of conversation between Baba, between Honorable Gideon Moi and between Ruto, and these meetings took place, sources now say, including even in Dubai, before this deal was actually arrived at. So it was a deal that you could say was actually well thought. All of them, of course, having been started their politics from Kanu, the way I said, they felt the need to revive Kanu and to bring Kanu back into national politics. So it is now said that Moi Gideon was eyeing the lucrative roads and transport sector. That part of this deal was that Moi Gideon was to be given the roads and transport sector. You remember currently the person that is serving in that position is also a very, very close ally of President William Ruto. His name is Honorable Davis Chirchir, and Honorable Davis Chirchir has served in different key departments, including in energy, and is currently now in roads. So this is the position that certain close individuals that want to stay anonymous but are very close enough with these particular participants of this deal to know what was brokered in this conversation, says that the Honorable Moi Gideon was eyeing the roads and transport docket. That of course is currently under Chirchir, or the other option that was there for him is that he was to be made the chief of staff. So perhaps this is what the president had in mind when he was saying that Gideon is now, past the senatorial position. Let us bring Gideon closer and give Gideon more, roles within the state and help me, plan this government. So perhaps the president had in mind making Gideon the chief of staff or the assistant chief of staff, so that Gideon could be actively involved in the decisions and in the workings of the day-to-day of the cabinet. But it seems that Gideon walked into this particular idea of joining the cabinet eyeing the roads and infrastructure, roads and of course and transport docket. And so perhaps it's as a result of this particular disconnect on the dreams and aspirations of Gideon's vis-a-vis what the president was offering that has not made this deal come to pass. But others say that it was more than just that. It was more than just the transport and roads docket. It was a primary deal for business. And the ones that say that this deal was meant to actually advance business, they say that Gideon did not want this deal signed because this deal was much of his personal businesses being promoted rather than the interest of Kanu being promoted. Now, these sources say that other than appointing Kanu loyalists for positions of permanent secretary and of course appointing Kanu loyalists to positions of ambassadors, which would have sealed this deal as a serious Kanu deal, Gideon's main aim was to settle a 3 billion odd debt that was as a result of works that were done under geothermal works that were done of course by companies linked to Gideon Moi under the Geothermal Development Company. So others say that the deal might have seemed as one that was looking at the interest of Kanu, but for the interest of Kanu, perhaps Kanu was just to be given positions of permanent secretary, and Kanu was also to be given positions of ambassadorial positions for those loyalists who are from within the Kanu party and who support President William Ruto's ideologies, while the main deal itself was to settle personal business cause, including a debt of 3 billion that is now owed by companies that are linked to Moi under the works that they have done in the geothermal work under the Geothermal Development Company. So the truth of this of course has not really come to light, even if it will come to light another day, because we have not seen either this debt allegedly being paid, or this particular appointments being made, or of course Gideon Moi being given the roads and transport docket. So this is the cause of the rumors and the maths within the Kanu party right now, because they're feeling betrayed. They're feeling that Gideon Moi himself had to shelve his ambitions, of course, of becoming a senator, and had to leave that for the UDA party, and he got into a deal without consulting the rest of the Kanu members, and this deal was not signed, so they do not even know the contents of the deal because it was not reduced in paper. But what they know is that they were given a deal to join the government. Now even the verbal aspect of it has not been implemented, because they have not seen any state appointments coming from State House, or any statements being made by the president to the light that Kanu is being included in the broad-based government. So they are feeling very short-changed with this particular deal, and of course it's taking very different turns. But now current and different members of the party have spoken at individual level. Mr. Wainaina, who is the party chairperson now, has dismissed these claims, saying that the UDA party has not duped them. They are in broad-based government, and the deal is there, and the deal will be enforced. So Mr. Wainaina still holds the position that this is not duping. This is actually part of the deal that they signed, and so we are hoping to see more coming out of this deal. Mr. Wainaina and his team has actually said that they will make a very solid comment on this particular deal in the next week. So in the next week, that is the week of 12th, we are hoping to see Kanu's stature, whether or not they are in the broad-based government, and if they are, then the deal that they have under that particular arrangement. Now Kanu intends to give detailed commitment in the course of next week. Let us stay updated and stay awake for that particular update that they will give us. Now Mbarire, who is the national chairperson of the UDA party, has talked on behalf of the UDA party concerning this deal, and Honorable Mbarire has said that this is not a political issue. This is actually just a procedural issue. There is no problem with the deal that they got into. Of course, I can't use the word they signed. There is no problem with the deal that they got into with, of course, the Kanu party, but the issues that exist are political issues, and of course are procedural issues, pardon me, and are not political issues. So what does she mean? She means that these particular grassroots elections that are taking place on Saturday are more priority to, of course, the UDA party than enforcing the Kanu deal. And so she says that once they are done with the grassroots elections that will be taking place in 3 regions, that is in the Mount Kenya area, 9 counties, in the Rift Valley area, 9 counties, that's 18 counties, in the western part of Kenya, 2 counties, a total of 20 counties. So after this exercise is done on Saturday, then they might sit down and review the deal. Now Kanu dissents have started to crop out. They are not keeping quiet, and they are blaming the Kanu party leader for actually getting into a decision without involving them. One such person is, of course, the member of parliament for Samburu East, Honorable Naisula Lasuda, who has now blamed the party leader and criticized the decision by Gideon Moi, saying that it was a decision that was arrived at without consulting the rest of Kanu members. And if they were, of course, being moved to the government side, according to Honorable Lasuda, they should have been consulted. And now that the deal has not brought any fruits, of course, the criticism of Honorable Lasuda are even more loud within the confines of the Kanu party. Other individuals might be discontented like Honorable Naisula Lasuda, but they have not come out and criticized Moi publicly like this honorable member of parliament for Samburu East. Now Gideon's success meant a lot. It meant a lot not only for Gideon Moi, but it meant a lot for the Moi family. It also meant a lot for Kanu. If Gideon succeeded, then the Moi family would have, one way or the other, found their foot back into politics and a chance to recreate the legacy of their late father, who was a president in the Kenyan political space. And of course, it would have been the revival of Kanu from all these years of being in the political wilderness. Kanu would now also have an opportunity to start reviving itself, not only just for the 2027 major polls, which is now so far-fetched from them, but for beyond, because it's the long-lasting party that is in Kenya. Actually, Kanu has been here from as early as 1963 when it was first formed. It was the party that led this particular country into independence, and it is the longest surviving party in the Kenyan political scene. So you just imagine how them being duped in a deal by President William Ruto hurts a lot of things in the spectrum of history. Now his failure will also put both Kanu and Moi family through more problems internally. You see, Kanu is already dwindling. Kanu is a very long-serving party, but its membership, of course, is also of those members that have been there for quite some time, or members who are affiliated to the party for some reason for quite some time. And so as a party, if this particular decision does not go through and they're not involved in the decisions of the country now, then their dwindling is more certain than ever, because this would have been their only opportunity to revive and come back in the Kenyan political scene actively. But if President William Ruto does not involve them in the decisions of the country right now, even after they have shelved off their political ambitions, including the by-elections of the senatorial position, which was so sure as the only senatorial seat that they would have secured in that particular by-election, then they are dwindling ahead of the 2027 political space is certain. So this is as much as personal to Gideon Moi as it is political, and we hope that in the course of next week, when they're giving us a report, Honorable Mbarire and team will have finished with the grassroots elections, and the Kanu UDA deal or the Moi Ruto deal will have been honored. Thank you so much for keeping it the People's Mirror. Until our next episode.